three victims. I'm going to give you a metaphor about that. But first, I want to talk about Gabby Petito. There's a lot of people who are pissed off because, well, their groups don't get the same attention because they're not pretty white girls with blonde hair and blue eyes. It is difficult for a pretty blonde haired, blue eyed girl to understand what most of the rest of us go through. I've had plenty of blonde haired, blue eyed girls give me advice that only exists and only works if you're a blonde haired, blue eyed, pretty white girl. With Natalie Bollinger's case, people didn't care if they got the right information. They didn't care if they got all the information. What they cared about was having a scapegoat. I heard two young men arguing earlier today, or yesterday rather. They were talking about that girl who was killed in Wyoming, Gabby Carter. Who is Gabby Carter? This woman's name was not Gabby Carter, it was Gabby Petito. Now, that's been rolling through my head, literally, since I heard that conversation yesterday. If they were to look up the name Gabby Carter, I'm going to do it matter of fact right now. Gabby Carter. Let's see, 21, born in Austin, Texas. Let's see what it says about her. An American actor. Ah, so I guess she's famous. I don't recognize her from any movies. Ah, said she's a porn star. All right, well, that would explain why two young white males in Chapel, Nebraska would get her name wrong. I guess there's no more mystery there. Now let's talk about these three victims. Let's pretend one of the victims is Native American. We'll pretend another victim is black. And we'll pretend that another victim is homeless. In reality, you can basically pick any group that you want for this. Let's say you have someone who is corrupt. Maybe it's a bad husband, maybe it's the mayor of your town, who knows? Maybe it's the cops. Now they victimize three people. Now, all three of these people have been victimized. Their predator is still free. All three of these people could work together to do something about that predator. But instead, they're too busy arguing over who's more victimized. My group is more victimized. No, mine is more victimized. No, mine is more victimized. Well, you need to shut up because I'm the one who's important here. No, you need to shut up. I'm the one who's important here. No, you need to shut up. I'm the one who's important here. So instead of doing something about the predator, all three of the victims are going at each other's throats, and their predator gets away. This is MMIW. This is BLM. The homeless community. I see the posts coming up from the homeless community. They seem to be the only ones doing the right thing. We got people from the homeless community fighting for Black lives. We have people in the homeless community fighting for missing and murdered Indigenous women. These people are the most victimized people in America, the homeless. And they're fighting for your rights, BLM. They're fighting for your rights, MMIW. Maybe instead of going at each other's throats, it would be a more productive thing to work together. If a rapist rapes 3 different people and those people are at each other's throats, instead of doing something about that rapist gets to rape more people. Because people didn't do anything about Clearview behavioral health when I first spoke up. They were able to abuse a lot more people and they killed a man. Because people didn't want to listen to me when I told on Officer Waylon Lolatai in Boulder, Colorado. Officer Waylon Lolatai assaulted 6 more homeless people in 2018. That's what happens when you ignore the victims. When you make excuses why the victim isn't worth listening to. It's horrible. Per capita, police in America kill more homeless people than anyone else. If the homeless people had the same size population as black people and disabled people, well, the police would be killing about 48,000 homeless people per year. So thank goodness there's not 60 million homeless people. Thank goodness there's only about 500,000. And even with only 1/120th the size of the population of the black folks and the disabled folks, the homeless still account for about 50% of those killed by police in 2019. I was abused in the same way as many of these minorities were. And that abuse, we agree that the abuse is wrong, correct? Or is it only wrong if it happens to a black person? Is it only wrong if it happens to a Native American? Are these crimes magically good things if they happen to a white person? You think all white people are rich? Is that what it is? Now, we all know that white privilege, one of the parts of that is the reduction in the chances of getting killed by police. Well, that reduction disappears when you're homeless. However, we got to see during the BLM protest marches that there were many white people willing to use their white privilege to protect black protesters. When the police pointed their guns at the protesters, there was a bunch of white people in the very front saying, if you're going to shoot somebody, you're going to shoot me first. The homeless are fighting for all of our rights, all of them. The homeless. The one group that you can fight for if you actually, the homeless have no rights. The homeless account for every group in America. Nearly every group in America. We have no representation in Congress. We have no representation in the Senate. We have no voice. When I see terrible things happening to another person, I don't pretend that they're okay magically because of someone's skin color or gender. Wrong is wrong. It's kind of like these posts that keep being popped up about how sexist men are and about how all they want is sex. All they care about is sex. Meanwhile, most of the women that are posting up stuff like that are also posting up about how they need penis. I just need to get laid. Weren't you just talking about how all men are pigs according to you? How all men want is sex? You're going to shame men for that? You're going to shame men for something that you are literally begging for on your Facebook page. You make one post about how all men want is sex, and your very next post, you're begging for sex. That seems pretty hypocritical to me. Kind of like complaining that Gabby Petito got all this attention. Why aren't missing and murdered Indigenous women getting that much attention? Why aren't these black males being shot to death getting that much attention? And to that I say, I have seen how much attention is given to BLM and how much attention has been given to MMIW because I have given plenty attention to both, and many people I know have given plenty of attention to both. Meanwhile, the homeless are victimized more than any of these groups. Are MMIW, are they speaking up about missing homeless people? Is BLM speaking up about the number of homeless people shot by police every year or incarcerated for crimes they didn't commit? And in many cases, crimes that were never committed. And I get to see how exposure is used to murder people. Exposure doesn't just kill Native American women. Exposure kills thousands of homeless people a year. And that's not counted, although that exposure for the homeless exists because of bad laws. Homeless people who die of exposure, that's not considered police killing. That's not in the statistics. That's not in the 49% of those killed by police in 2019. I fit the three most victimized groups in the country, but I'm told that I need to go to the back of the bus because I'm white and because I'm male. I can't be a victim because of that, according to American bias. Now, we can all agree that police killing people is wrong. We can all agree that rape is wrong. But then again, when a rapist rapes three people and those three people are at each other's throats, and I made this point many times before, as long as you're at each other's throats, the predator gets away and he gets to do it again and again and again. I've tried to turn in Dual County Sheriff's Department repeatedly, and every time they pull the same bullshit. Do you know why? Because although I can read your pretty words on Facebook and I can read your pretty words on YouTube, in reality, you're not doing shit for me. In reality, while I have spoken up literally hundreds upon hundreds of times for MMIW and BLM, are they fighting for me? Does my group get a mention? Do disabled people matter? Do homeless people matter? Or are we not people to you? Instead of telling people that they're not victimized enough to complain, I want you to think about how that feels. I want you to reflect on that. How does it feel when you were treated that way? Does it feel good? It doesn't feel good to treat someone like they're not a human being, like they don't matter. Oh, you only account for 22% of those killed by cops. You don't matter. Well, with all due respect, they do. They are still victims. The Dual County Sheriff is a rotten SOB. He broke a lot of laws. All of these tricks that they use to prevent a homeless person or a disabled person who is alone from having an honest court date, from turning in their predators, from getting justice. I have lived this shit firsthand. Firsthand. My experience with cops doesn't come from reading MMIW posts and MMIP posts. It doesn't come from reading BLM posts. Matter of fact, I read those posts and I can identify with them. How many of the people in these groups can identify with me? Only the ones who are disabled and homeless. There was some men who decided that after a BLM rally that they were going to go celebrate by taking out their frustration on a homeless person, despite the fact that these were black men and it was a BLM rally. When they decided they were going to throw an artillery shell from the 4th of July at a homeless person, they picked a black homeless person. Do you think they cared that it was a black homeless person? No. What they cared about was that it was someone who was easy to victimize. Nobody cares about the homeless except for the homeless. And by then, of course, it's too late. You don't care about the homeless until you're homeless. And then you realize nobody cares about you. You are everyone's scapegoat. You are everyone's go-to guy when they have a bad day. Now, rather than fact checking, I had to deal with a witch hunt. Still do. People bragged in these so-called Natalie Bollinger groups, even typing things like, I'm down with going on a witch hunt, or let's get the son of a bitch. Well, they ain't come to get me yet. I've been harassed, but I ain't been killed. And that's probably their biggest mistake. If these people who threatened to kill me had actually killed me, I would not be here today speaking up. Now, despite the annoyance by these groups about the attention that Gabby Petito got, I'm sure they can all admit that what her family has to go through is horrible. See, it don't matter if you're a white person, a Native American, a black person. The loss of a child is the loss of a child. And although Gabby was not literally a child, to her parents she was. She was their child. That loss still hurts for them. Even though her parents are not Native Americans or black people, that loss still exists. About the only bright side I can pull out of any of this is that it seems Gabby's family are far better people than Natalie Bollinger's family were ever capable of being. We work together or we get nothing. We work together or our predators get away. When you say, oh, well, you only account for 20% of the victims, and I account for a higher portion of the victims, so I matter more. No, you don't. That 20% right there that you are throwing away and making feel like they are not worth listening to because they don't fit the same percentage as you. You need numbers to win this. Our rights. If you just want special rights, you're a special kind of stupid. That 20%, that 20% that cops are victimizing a group that's not you, that's still an additional 20% more help than what you got now. Your comparison between MMIW and Gabby Petito is the same comparison I make between the homeless and MMIW. The comparison that you make between BLM and Gabby Petito is the same comparison that I make between homeless people and black people. We're everybody's shit and post. We're everybody's toilet paper. Now, just because there are people who are a part of BLM or MMIW who take part in this abuse towards the homeless doesn't mean that all of them do. Kind of like just because there are a lot of black people who are addicted to drugs, or Native Americans who are addicted to drugs, or homeless people who are addicted to drugs, it doesn't mean that all Native Americans are addicted to drugs. It doesn't mean that all black people are addicted to drugs. It doesn't mean that all homeless people are addicted to drugs. You want to judge the entire group. Well, I can do that too. It ain't right when you do it. And as a result, it ain't right when I do it. But if I do it, I'm just trying to prove the point of how screwed up it is. It doesn't feel good when it happens to you, does it? Of course it doesn't. Nobody likes to be treated like they don't matter. And how dare one rape victim tell another rape victim that they were not raped enough to be allowed to speak up? It's not okay. It's 5:03 in the morning, so I'm going to turn this video off. Y'all be safe. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Someone at the last moment calling themselves Marcus Drexel typed, "When is court 3?" I don't understand the question, I guess. That's the best way to answer that. All right, I'm going to shut off the video now. Y'all be safe.